On this week's episode, we talk about things sighted people do that kind of get under our skin a bit.
It's goofy, it's serious, it's all in good fun.
So stick around.
Hi, and welcome to Rare with Flair.
The podcast where two best friends with the same rare disease are out here living our best lives. I'm your host, Casey.
And I'm your host, Cassandra.
Oh, Cass, how have you been lately, girl?
Cold. Like, I've been cold. It's cold.
That's the correct answer, I think, for a lot of the U.S. and probably a lot of the world at the moment. Well,
the top half of the world, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, part of the world is not in our same season. But I currently have a lot of snow. Listen, you guys, I'm in Tennessee. We don't really see snow often, and it's about 5 or 6 inches of snow outside right now.
So much
and it's
snow.
been that way. Yeah, and it's not going above freezing for a few days, so it's going to be a while.
That's, wow. Do you guys have salt? Question mark.
You know, yes, I think, question mark, but our city is not the best at taking care of itself when it snows. Everything is basically shut down and we're all stuck inside of our houses, so.
That's kind of cozy, though. I don't know. That feels like winter cozy.
No, it's been nice.
Yeah.
I really prefer it over an ice storm, which we often get, and that's when the power goes out and all of that. So, like, it is kind of cozy.
I like that. See, it hasn't snowed very much here in Ohio, actually. It's just really, really cold. So, like, I gotta wear a ton of layers whenever I go anywhere. But I have this great scarf that my bestie knitted me for Christmas, which has come in so handy. So I talked about from my vision board that I've been trying to go to the gym more often since it's within a walking distance from my house now. And I went on Sunday and it was like 8 degrees outside and I wrapped my scarf around my face and I was warm and fun. It was awesome.
Me so happy. I'm so glad I was able to give it to you like at the start of the cold winter.
Girl, you have no idea how meaningful
so
and helpful this gift has been.
That's so great. And you know, when we're stuck inside of our houses, it just gives us more time to read, to bake, to watch cartoons.
That is so right.
To do the cozy hobbies that we are always doing year round, but somehow feel cozier in the winter than they would in the summer.
It's just because we're cold now, so we get to bundle up and do them. So.
I know. So much better.
You were just traveling very briefly, but you were just traveling.
Yeah, very briefly. Like one of my best friends from childhood who I met when I was 2 had a baby.
Wow.
And that was, a human.
That's
is now
wild.
Living at her house.
Taking up residence.
I got to meet him, and it was like super surreal and
That's
very
so
nice.
Special.
Yeah, it was really important to me that I went and met him. And he was a really great baby, very sweet and easy baby, and good to see my friend.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Have you had any updates for us?
Do I have any updates? Well, I've just been baking. I had near catastrophe baking because I was taking a rideshare to deliver some tarts, and the rideshare driver was going to be helpful, and he said, like, I can grab your Tupperware, and I was like, okay, and I'm getting out of the car, and I hear a noise. And I look, and it's really bright out, but I see half of my tarts are on the pavement. And you know what? It did crush my soul a little. But
your tarts got crushed along with your very soul.
Along with my soul.
Along with your spirit.
Yeah. But, you know, it not all was lost because the assistant manager of the cafe that I sell them to, she like happily took them despite the gravel in them, which was a compliment. It's like, I hope she's okay, but
the The tarts are so tasty. I will eat them despite at all costs. Just pick out the gravel, girl. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, it was fine.
I hope she lives, and that's great though. That's not great actually. I said that's great. That's not great.
It had a kind of a nice
now. It had kind of a nice ending that someone still wanted the tarts.
It did.
But I mean, I assume in the moment it was like very soul crushing that you had spent so much time on
it. It was mostly just the time piece that I was like, I was right there, and it was right in the front entrance. It was kind of the nightmare scenario I have, but then it's like, well, it has already happened. So, you know when you like live through something that you think is a nightmare scenario, and then you're like, well, I'm still here.
Well, so yep, that's true, because I'm telling you, I mean, when you talk about the time it takes, it is very rare that I FaceTime Cassandra when she is not in an apron. So it's a lot of time in her life that she is in the apron, in the kitchen.
Casey has specifically requested that when we FaceTime that I do be baking. So
yeah, I like
now
it.
It's imposed.
See, we watch Adventure Time together, but it's like a double show because I'm watching Adventure Time while also watching a baking show of Cassandra baking. It's a strange combination, but oddly works.
That's amazing. There was that one Adventure Time episode where they had like these like magical tarts, and it made my life significantly better knowing that existed. Yeah. There was the royal tart toter and everything.
Yeah. Speaking of tarts on a cartoon, Cassandra and I are also both watching The Dragon Prince right now.
Ooh,
and I feel
Casey
we're not watching it together.
First.
I started first, and I feel the need to say that because somebody asked in our Q&A if we had seen it, and I said I had only seen season 1, and now I'm happy to report I am breezing through the entire thing, and I'm so glad that it's not over yet, and I do highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, and I'm really loving it, and there are also, oddly enough, there are tarts featured in that show too, so I don't know what's up with all the tarts. It comes up a lot
in the audio description, which is actually it's so good. There's so much that happens on that show that needs description. It's kind of wild, and there's a disability representation in it. Yep, it is so cool.
Yes. So I wouldn't be able to follow it very well without the audio description. It's a very action heavy show, so
despite being animated, which you would think makes it easier to see, but it really is very active.
No,
and there are
actually, like, this is, I was going to tell you this, and it's so relevant for the podcast, and then we'll actually get to the real topic, but there have truly been so many times while watching The Dragon Prince where I was like, I definitely didn't see that at all. And one time I even rewound it to like to see like what the audio description was saying.
Yeah.
And like I still couldn't see it. I was like, I'm not seeing what they're saying at all.
At what point did this happen? Like,
I think it was a lot of times in season 3. So you'll get there.
Ooh,
but a lot, like there were quite a few times where I was like, I didn't see any of this. So and it's a lot of like they do a lot of facial expressions too, which I appreciate. They'll say like he smiled slightly. There was one time where one of the characters winked at the other character. I would have never seen that.
I even saw something that happened at the very beginning where like they described something that happened to a character, and I was like, oh, that really changed what I thought happened. When I saw it happen, and I had no idea. So thanks, AD.
Yeah. And like we always say, we would still enjoy it and follow it just fine, I'm sure-ish. And we would still enjoy it, I guess, bottom line. But not nearly as much without that extra added context.
Well, so and there's like an amount of like back work and reshuffling the prior idea that you had in your brain when like you visually thought something happened or you missed something, and you're like, wait, at what point? Okay, whatever. You just kind of like learn to accept things that you don't fully understand.
It's true. Yeah, you're so right. We just fill in the blanks ourselves. So
you know what? That's such a good segue into our episode, actually. We didn't even mean for that to happen.
It happens we're just we're really so talented. It happens every time we
are on season 5 of this podcast.
Season
so
5.
That sounds made up.
Oh my gosh. That sounds
That sounds fake.
like what? Yeah. Where did the time go?
I don't
How did
know.
that happen?
We're in
I
episode
don't know.
85.
85.
What kind of number is that?
When we get to 100,
We're gonna have a
be
party.
a celebration of epic proportions.
We're gonna have a party.
I'm 100% buying a cake, and I'm not being funny.
Oh,
I'm buying a cake.
I would buy a cake. I may make a cake, but I might just buy a cake.
Oh, you should make a cake.
yeah,
I will be
then we can
buying,
put
you
it
will
on
be
the
making.
picture.
Yeah.
You could make a cake,
that.
like you really could. I'm not good at
I
decorating them,
could.
so we could
I
make
could, but I just want to put 100 episodes on it, or just a 100 on it.
That's
so
true.
we have plans.
Stick around, but
Stick around. So this ep is going to take a little bit of a disclaimer. That's exactly the word I'm looking for.
okay.
Maybe we have been doing this too long. I don't know. Would you like to start?
So I thought of this episode from like personal experience. Just like I had some weird moments recently and I was like, this would make a really good episode. Okay, so this is truly all in good fun. And we were talking about things that sighted people do, like we said in the open, that they might be just a little bit quirky or like on the side of annoying. Generally not, like there are some things that we will preface when something is more like offensive, but like most of these things are just a little tone deaf and not at all things that keep us up at night, that are just, you know, rude and horrible and whatever. We don't want people to feel like they're walking on broken glass around us, or that every little thing bothers us, but it's just, I hope you guys will see what we mean when we give some examples, just because it's I think the audience makes a difference. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. It's all in good fun. It's all good natured. And the last thing we would want is for you to feel like you can't say things around us, or you have to watch what you're saying around us. But we have a little list here. We're going to talk about some of the things we experience and that we hear often that just kind of get under our skin. Yeah, it's not necessarily, some of these aren't necessarily offensive. It's just kind of like,
some of them are just funny.
Almost, it's like people talking and not realizing we're standing right there, like not realizing their audience in a way of what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And I agree. Some of it is just funny. I think this episode will be funny and light. We're trying to keep it lighthearted, and hopefully a lot of you that are low vision listening to can,
you know what
relate.
they are? I'm just realizing now. A lot of these are like cited microaggressions. That's what these are.
You're right. You're so right. You're so right.
But some of them are just goofy. So, all right. Here's a goofy one. So, sighted people, they are mostly used to driving. And when their car is at the shop, you would think that they had like a limb removed. Like,
right.
They do not know what to do or how to get anywhere. And it's like, I wonder what that's like. Crazy.
And the funny thing is, like, we totally get that it's probably a big inconvenience if you're used to driving and you don't have your car. But it's really funny when people complain about this in front of us. Like, oh, I don't have my car for a day. Oh no. And we're just standing there like, oh, and it's like, it puts us in such an interesting spot because we're trying to like console them and validate their feelings while also being like kind of rolling our eyes internally a little bit, not gonna lie.
It's really hard to have empathy in this moment for like an experience
in a lot of these. Actually.
Yeah. it's okay, these are experiences that we don't have any context in. And so for us to attempt to put ourselves in that position of like, okay, what if I had a car? That's even that thought is like, that's crazy. Like, I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, it is crazy. I try to understand, and I'm not going to hold it against them that they're allowed to complain. They're allowed to complain about it.
People are allowed to complain about like everything. It is a very privileged thing to complain about, though.
Yeah, yeah. And when you complain about it to us, it's just kind of funny. Let's be real.
It's goofy.
Like, it's like, oh, sorry. Sorry that you can't drive.
Really hard.
Oh, that's kind of difficult.
Have you heard of Uber, though? Like,
or like maybe ask your family and friends for a few days. Like we have to.
I'm sure they'd be happy to help. And I find that a lot of these people also have maybe multiple cars. So like maybe they're married and they have multiple cars, and it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe just ask your spouse for a ride in the other car.
In the other car that you have. Yes. Yes, quite right. So this one, this comes to my mind a lot, and I think this comes with the fact that we have been low vision our entire lives. A lot of people haven't, but we have. And it interests me, Cass, to think about us as children and how we had to grow up very quickly and mature very quickly in many ways. Because an example I think about a lot is you're in class at school and you're young. I'm talking elementary school, even though this ended up happening for the rest of our lives and still to this day. But you're in elementary school. The teacher is doing like a science experiment, or there is, you know, maybe a new person visiting the classroom, a show and tell type thing, or maybe somebody brings like a small animal into the classroom for all the kids. It's something where all the kids can gather around and look at this experiment going on, or this like thing that someone is showing. And this happens all the time. And every kid is screaming, I can't see, move, I can't see it. And the funniest part about this experience, though, is not that it's not how they're acting, Cass. I want to know if you had the same experience as I did. Okay, for me, I literally threw up my hands, metaphorically, and just did not even try or care at all. So even if like getting close would have helped me a little bit, all the kids are screaming to see. And I remember kind of having to be like the mature young 5-year-old that I had to be, and just kind of sitting back and saying, you know what, I would like to see that thing, but like I'm not even gonna attempt it. I don't even care. And it's kind of sad.
I think it's a few things. Number one, I think it's the amount of effort it would take for us to see it in a way that was satisfactory is like much more than what other, like, you know, quote unquote normally sighted individuals would need. And we know, because there are so many people just clamoring to see that thing, we're just like, well, it seems like too much of a battle to actually wage in this very chaotic moment. And then the other thing is, I mean, and this also sounds kind of sad, we're kind of used to missing out a lot, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that happens that we know of that's happening, and there's a lot of stuff that we don't even know of that's happening. So if something exciting is going on and there's a lot of people like trying to see it, it almost doesn't feel worth it, because like, I don't know, like, is it really that important?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of sad that like we had to get used to missing out on a lot of stuff. But I find it interesting that we both kind of reacted in a similar way of just not trying. Because I never tried. It's exactly what you said. There wouldn't have been a satisfactory way for me to have seen what was going on unless I was like maybe the only kid in the room, and I maybe had like hands on. I could touch the thing, or I could really like get really close. But that was never going to happen.
And sometimes
so I just
would
sat back.
Yeah, and you know, there is room for advocating for yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, but not even in that moment, actually. A lot of times I would wait until the end and then go ask and be like, can I see it now? Yeah.
Me too. I did that sometimes too.
You just have to wait until like all of the chaos dives down, because you're not going to, like, there's no way that you're going to be heard over all of that. No. And you can do it in a calm moment too. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Right, no, you're good. It's not that I like don't believe in advocating either. I think just a lot of these things like didn't matter enough.
Yeah.
Which is why it was so funny that it like so mattered to these other children that were like screaming that they had to see it or their life was going to be over, Cassandra. Like it was going to be over if they couldn't see the thing.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I don't know. We made a list for this episode, and I think of things now that I think could apply. This kind of reminds me of sighted people are just so used to using their eyes. I think I've told this story before, but like we either are used to imagining things or memorizing things to the point where like we forget that people just look at everything. They just look at everything. Mm-hmm. And you know, we have some vision, so we do that a little bit too, but not to the same extent as like someone who is fully sighted. And I'll like never forget, I was trying to give someone directions when I was in undergrad. So I knew Ohio State is massive. It has like its own zip code, but I knew the whole campus really well after at least a semester, but by the time I was a sophomore, I knew it extremely well. And I was trying to give my roommate my sophomore year, who was a senior, directions. I was like, oh, you go stand on like Woodruff Road. And she's like, where is that? And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. How do I explain this to you?
Yeah.
They just look at the buildings and they look at the signs and they just know where they are by looking around and that's it. It's nuts.
Yeah. They don't have to rely. Yeah, and sometimes that's a good thing for us that we have to memorize more things.
It really
and stuff,
is.
So, I love that. That's a great example of that.
I think, back to our list, though, I think another thing that you brought up is, like, people want to have it all. And people really forget, why it is we have accommodations, and they conflate accommodations with special treatment. Mm-hmm. So like if we had to take like extra time on a test, like I remember, so when I took the ACT when I was in high school, and I had it, I don't know what your I don't know if we talked about this. I forget what your testing experience was like, but I had I had each subject spread over multiple days, and I got like either like 1.5 times or 2 times, because everything just takes forever, and it was large print, like all of the things. Yep. And it took a long time, and people, I remember mentioning it to a few people and then stopping doing that because people didn't understand why I was able to do that, and were just really upset that they didn't get extra time in between their test because it was a long and hard test. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand like how long everything takes when you can't see.
Right. Right. I had somebody make a comment to me in college when I was signing up for classes a day early, you know, like, well, that's not fair that you get to do that. And I was like, okay, well, it's not really fair that I can't see, but I mean,
I'm not here complaining about it.
You know, we pre-board on the airplane and stuff like that, but that's also, it's not like for fun. Like we need some extra time or like, you know, sometimes that kind of stuff.
Dude, when I don't pre-board, like I am not an anxious person. I do not have anxiety, but I have anxiety in that moment because people are waiting for me. Right. They're just standing behind me, like, irritated and wanting to sit down, and I'm taking a while looking for my seat and trying to put my stuff up in the thing. It's a lot.
Right. Right. It is a lot. And, like, even accommodations at theme parks and stuff, especially when you have, like, a service dog like you do. Like, you need those kind of things.
You're so
and I
lucky. You get to take your
like,
dog
oh,
everywhere.
yeah, you're so lucky. You get to have a dog everywhere. You get to stand in line short or whatever. You're so lucky. Oh, it's so great. You have all these things. And it's like, yeah. And I even had teachers. I had a teacher in high school. I asked for a copy of the notes. And he was like, well, if I give you a copy, I'm going to have to give everyone else one, too. And I was like, actually, that's not how that works at all. Like, what are you talking about?
Actually, you don't have to do that because I can't see the board.
Yeah. What? So yeah, it's equality.
Unreal.
It was unreal. So yeah, that's another thing that people kind of get under our skin about a bit.
Yeah, just like remember what it must be. Just, you may not have any concept, but just think before you think that someone is getting something really special. There might be a reason, because there are a lot of other things that are really difficult. You don't want that life.
Right. Our next one is, and this is similar to the car being in the shop, but it is when someone loses their glasses. Yeah. I just don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
And again,
I'm sorry that you lost your glasses, but
this is one of those things like the car in the shop that if you are used to having corrected vision and suddenly you have uncorrected vision that might be similar to ours corrected, that would be really hard. You would not have any coping skills to be able to deal with the fact that you now have like 2200 vision because you lost your glasses. However,
yeah, and glasses are expensive. You don't want to lose them and have to.
yeah.
I get it. I do get it.
However, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Welcome.
Is it fun? Like,
yeah.
Please tell me.
Well, and it's just, like I said, know your audience because you're complaining about it in front of us. And I do have a quick story of when I was in college. I had to take a lot of dance classes because I did musical theater. So I was in a dance class. And there was a guy in my class who either lost or forgot his glasses. I actually forget which it was. But he didn't have his glasses. And of course, dancing is very visual, which is one of the reasons I always struggled with it. Plus, I'm just not a good dancer naturally. But he was really struggling to learn the dance. You know, hey, you're finally seeing how it is to live like me all the time for one day. He was really struggling. But then another girl in the class was like talking to him, and she said, "Oh my gosh, how are you doing this? Like, how are you learning the dances? I feel so bad for you." And I said out loud, I was like, "Really?" I was like, "What about me every day?" And like everyone was laughing, which I mean, like I was kind of joking.
It was
with
a
her,
joke.
like,
yeah,
it was a joke, but also I wasn't joking. I was like, "Are you serious right now? You're like feeling so bad for him." And I was like, maybe that even gave her a moment to stop and think, wow, Casey, the reason, like, maybe Casey's such a crappy dancer because she can't see anything. Or also, she's just a crappy dancer.
And I know people with albinism that are good dancers.
No, I know, for sure.
You know,
for
whatever.
Sure.
I'm also a terrible dancer and cannot follow it super well.
Right. No. There are low vision people who can dance very beautifully.
Right.
But I was like, maybe this gives you a little glimpse, all of you in the class, a little glimpse into the fact that it is really hard.
Yeah.
To be learning new combinations every week, you know.
I think that is truly the frustrating part of that story. It's not necessarily that this guy lost his glasses. It's the fact that people made a huge deal of it. It's like, how could you ever function?
And I think it's because we cope so well that people literally don't give a second thought to the struggle of what we go through because they're like, oh, well, they're doing fine, so I'm sure their vision is okay. Like, it's probably not that bad.
And the hard thing is that I think if they did think too hard about our struggle, they would just feel so sorry for us that they don't know how to relate to us after that. That every conversation is going to be about the fact that we cannot see very well and that's it. Like they don't
which
they
there
don't
are
know.
people that do that too, actually.
Yeah. It's hard. That's what I don't know. That's kind of what makes disclosing hard. I heard this recently of just like sometimes you just don't want to disclose because you know that people are going to make it a huge thing and you don't want the whole like, I don't know, conversation, relationship to be totally derailed by the fact that you know, were open and now they don't see you for anything else.
Yeah, and that's a common theme of this pod, is that it's often one way or the other, and it's very hard to find that middle ground of people who do validate your struggle but don't make a huge thing of it. And I'm not asking them to do it perfectly, because I can't say that I'd be able to, and that's why we don't want anyone listening to feel like, how are we supposed to act? How are we supposed to do this? It's not that deep, and honestly, most of the time, it's not a big problem, but it's more so with acquaintances that don't know us well that I feel like they go one way or the other really strongly.
Yeah, and like, I who's to say that if we were interacting with people with disabilities that we weren't as familiar with, we would also probably do some things that were tone deaf also. Like, because we don't have much experience with that. And so, we are very fault tolerant. Of course, like, we're going to make some jokes about it just to, diffuse the tension, or, I don't know, call attention to something that might have been a little bit awkward. But we're gonna try to just take it in stride, because people are human. But
yeah, I think, like, you don't have to be perfect, but as long as you try to stay not so far one way or the other, like not being so overly over the top helpful, or not being so like dismissive of our feelings or struggles, like as long as you kind of try to stay in the middle. And I think we do a pretty good job of that, just because we are disabled. So we, like, even if it's a different disability than us, like, we somewhat understand the struggle. But if I weren't born this way, I probably would make those faux pas all the time around
all
people.
The time.
Like, all the time. And there's just so much we don't understand still. And I'm sure I do it too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's so much nuance, and especially having a service dog, it happens.
Oh yeah, I'm
so much, and you just have to learn to take it. And not to brag, I feel like we're pretty good about it. All things considered.
I mean, we don't. We're not like getting offended about all of these things. It's kind of just a funny thing to inwardly laugh at.
Yeah. I think it also, like, people losing their glasses kind of reminds me of, like, when even we've talked about this often, I think, but like when people talk about just how bad their vision is, like, without their glasses. And
I gotta say, this one really bugs me.
Yeah. I'm legally blind too. Without my glasses.
Right.
That it's really me. Not that's the same thing.
That's a whole other thing, because that's just wrong. Like, that's literally just flat out wrong. You're incorrect. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're just wrong. Yeah. But also, it's just annoying when they're like, they actually think their vision is really bad. And they're like actually complaining about it, because maybe their vision is like slightly worse than perfect. And like, I don't even know what you're complaining about. Like, because they still do everything a very typical way. They still drive. They still like live a very normal life, but they still are like, I can't see. I'm blind as a bat. It's like,
oh my god.
And if you've ever said this in front of me, once again, like, no shade. I actually had someone say that in front of me recently, but that person didn't know that I was low vision.
Right.
And I am giving much more of a pass to that, because if you know that I'm low vision and you say that in front of me, then you have no right. You have no right to say that in front of me. And that does
This is the thing I do want to preface. If someone like, this can very quickly feel offensive, because I don't know. There's a lot of language that's been used colloquially for a long time that is just, ist by nature, be it like racist or ableist or sexist or whatever. And I think in recent years, there's been a lot of deconstruction of that. So I think it's hard to unlearn some of these behaviors. And we talked about this really early on in our pod, like when people say like, I'm so OCD, because they're like, being a perfectionist about something. It's like, no, you're actually not. But
right.
But when people, I really don't like it when people are like trying to find something and it's like, man, I'm so blind and like I can't find it, and I'm like, oh my god, stop. Like,
yeah,
I've gotten into the habit that when people do that in front of me, be it someone that I know well or not, I honestly end up replying, I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah, you just say something.
I
Yeah,
can't-
because
no.
I sometimes I'll see like an Insta video about like glasses or about how bad their vision is without glasses, and it's just the entire comment section is everybody talking about how bad their vision is without their glasses. Well, I'm so blind without my glasses, and I'm like, but why does it matter if you're blind without your glasses or contacts? Like I get it that maybe glasses and contacts, sure, they're expensive. Sure, they're a hassle sometimes, whatever. But people act like it's such a thing and such a complaint. And I'm like, if you have perfect vision with your glasses, I don't see the issue to complain about. I personally don't. Maybe you do, but like me being who I am, I can't force myself to see how that's a problem for you. Like,
To
I
me,
just can't.
that just feels like, man, I'm so cold without my coat on. It's like, well, then put your coat on. It's crazy. What are you saying? You can
But
fix
Cass,
it.
they don't even want the coat. They just want to be warm with no coat.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool and nice?
Yeah. No, I know. And then there
like,
are
this
people
isn't-
who can't have a coat at all.
Yeah.
We don't
Because
have,
we don't
a
have
coat.
access to coats.
We don't have access to a coat, and it doesn't work for us, even if we did.
Yeah, we'll wear a coat and we're still cold, unfortunately. And they're like, get a better coat. This analogy
Get a
keeps
better
working.
coat. Yeah, I don't like it, and that I don't even know if I would say it's like so offensive, but also it bugs me.
I find it a little
bugs me.
offensive just because it's like, you're really not blind. Stop using
Stop.
my experience as like a measuring stick for your inability to find an object. Like,
We hear it all the time. People say this all the time.
it's so common.
All the time. I'm like, and who's to say I wouldn't say it if I were, didn't have my disability? I
Right.
might, and I wish I wouldn't, but who knows what I would
Right?
say.
But like, these are I mean, when you're using language like this, like, think about it for a second. Like, these are like real actual people.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you know what? I don't think they realize, I truly don't think a lot of people realize that there are people on this earth who don't have vision that can be corrected by glasses.
Well, it's either that or you're totally blind, right? Like, there is no in between.
And like, and there are people in some poorer areas of the world who have really bad vision that could be corrected by glasses or surgery and don't have access, and I would consider them disabled because they don't have access. But
Yeah.
if you have access, okay.
It's a tool, and if you use your tool, you're fine. Sometimes people can't afford or are unable to acquire said tool, and that also makes them unable to do something. But if you
Right.
have access to getting glasses and you just choose not to wear them, or you complain about how bad your vision is even though you have them, like, I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, because being disabled means that you are unable to do things. And if you can wear your glasses and function normally, like, and you like maybe your vision is slightly worse than the average, but it doesn't actually affect your daily life at all, except when you take your glasses off, then you don't have a disability. And this might be
And that-
controversial. I hope it's not, because it's
that is
literally what
actually
I'm saying is true.
considered in like the disability space and in like the accessibility world. When we talk about different kinds of disabilities, there are some that are acquired, there are some that are temporary, like if you like break your leg, you can't really use it for a while.
Yeah.
This is a situational disability, and everyone can experience like a situational disability. Like, if it's dark out and you can't find something, that's situationally limiting. But like, it is super situational that you can put your glasses on or off and be able to see better or worse.
Right.
Just try to
Right,
fix
and
the
to say-
situation if it's in your power.
To say you're legally blind without your glasses, literally the definition of legally blind is best corrected. So you're not legally blind without your glasses. You're not legally
You are
blind at all.
illegally blind.
You're illegally blind. You're not legally blind at all. You can say, this is the sentence you can say the next time you really feel the urge to say you're legally blind without your glasses. You can say, I would be legally blind if glasses didn't help me. That's the sentence.
Yeah.
Keep it in your head and never say the other one again, please. Thank you.
Because it also shows
passive-aggressive.
appreciation for the fact that visual correction exists and that you have a type of visual impairment that is correctable.
But you aren't actually visually impaired because it is correctable, which is not the definition of visually impaired.
It's not the definition of legally blind, but is it the definition of visually impaired?
No.
It's a broader term. I don't know.
It is, but if your vision is corrected by glasses, like fully, you're not visually impaired.
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of, especially, this was way more common back when we were growing up, because the 2000s was a very image-conscious era. But when people would be like, I'm so pale, I'm basically albino. Like,
all the time.
So often. And it's like, actually, I'm really albino, so crazy.
I'm really albino. I actually usually keep my mouth shut during that moment.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it, because
really
if I say I'm actually albino for real, it's gonna
too
make
many
a lot of
follow-up questions.
Too many follow-up questions. I just don't even say anything. This happens to me a lot. It's usually around people who don't know that I have albinism. But it happens a lot. And I just have to sit there. Actually, I was literally recently with a group of people, and one of the girls was a redhead and very pale, and a lot of people were asking her, oh, I bet you have to wear sunscreen like every day. Oh, I bet your skin just burns so bad. It was like right next to me. And inside I wanted to be like, I'm a real albino right here in the flesh. But I didn't.
I will say, I have this makeup that is basically unpigmented. It's honestly really amazing because every other makeup is just a little bit too dark for my skin. But one of the models for this, like, not shade, was like just a very, very pale redhead. And I was like, that does kind of track. The redheads and the people and then the other one looked like a person with albinism. So it was like, yeah, I guess redheads could truly be as pale as we are.
Sometimes paler.
Or paler.
In my case. Yes,
Casey can tan, and I'm not over it.
I'm weird. I'm strangely tan, and I have extremely, strangely dark eyes.
It's an HPS thing. Like,
it's
her subtype of HPS thing.
Yep.
Because there are some people with HPS type 3 who have like dark brown hair and darker skin, but it kind of tracks that you can tan. Regardless, I'm still like low-key jealous. It's fine.
We did this like lovely Zoom call at NOAA, and it was kind of like my vision for the year, and we had an eye, and we did it with the kids and the adults, and you could like color in the eye and then put some of your goals for the year. And we were telling people you can color in your eye the color of your eye. A lot of people were doing pretty like blues and light blues and lavenders and things like that, and I had my like brown like colored pencils, and I like showed everybody on the Zoom. I was like, mine are brown because I'm weirdly, my eyes are dark. I don't understand it. Please don't ask questions because I can't answer.
I will not be taking follow-up questions.
I will not be taking questions about why my eye is brown, but it is what it is.
Yeah. That's why we can't, like, especially since our hair is like naturally but darker than the average person with albinism. This is why we do not want to react to this. I'm so pale because I'm albino. Anyway.
Right. Another thing that just can kind of get under our skin a bit is when people constantly ask us why we haven't gotten surgery. It's a funny... Do you get asked this all the time? Because I do.
Have you ever tried LASIK?
Yeah. Did I tell my LASIK story on the pod? I'm pretty sure I did.
Maybe. I don't remember.
There was a professor... Oh, it's very quick. But there was a professor at my college with the last name LASIK. And someone asked me, have you had LASIK? And I defensively was like, that doesn't work for me. And they were asking me if I had her as a professor, you guys. And I was like so like defensive. I was like, that doesn't work. They were like, what? What are you talking about?
Literally something that we've talked about on this pod before. It's
Yeah.
because we get so many weird interactions where it's unfortunate that we're like kind of naturally defensive because this kind of stuff happens all the time. Where like it's probably like a lot of the times it's probably not even about that.
You're so right. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when it's not, because here you are getting defensive for no reason whatsoever. And the person is like, why are you mad, bro? Like, I was just asking about a professor. And I'm over here like assuming everything's about blindness, and then it makes it look like blindness is my whole personality.
It's such a challenge. It's truly such a challenge. I completely agree with that. It's weird, and then like sometimes people will really press as if it's we just refuse treatment, and
yeah, they don't believe you, do they? They just don't believe that there's not a surgery.
I literally like the one thing that ends up quieting people is they're like, oh, can't you just like, you could probably get like a retina transplant. And I was like, first of all, that sounds terrible, but second of all, like the optic nerve connection to my brain is wrong. I'm not gonna fix that. There's nothing that can fix that.
Right. Right. That's so funny. I've heard the retina transplant thing too.
And I'm like, why?
They're saying that as if, first of all, it's like a very common procedure, and if they know everything about it. It's just so funny. It's like, well, obviously you need to do a retina transplant.
Yeah.
No, buddy. That's not going to fix the other 8 problems with my eye, but
thanks. I appreciate your effort.
Yeah. I really think that they think we haven't looked into all the options.
Especially at this age, like, do you really think that we're like well into adulthood and we haven't thought about or heard any of these miraculous suggestions? I'll never forget, I told this on our rideshare story last year, I'll never forget the Uber driver who told me about a chip implant that supposedly could fix my vision.
Oh, wow, Cass. Why haven't you done that?
Just fly to a different country and get a chip implanted in my brain. It's that simple.
Sounds like something on Buffy the Vampire Slayer to me.
It literally is something right about
literally a plot line in a fantasy series, because that's how outlandish that idea is.
Oh my gosh. So another thing that is just, it's more hurtful than offensive, or it is rude, but it is just more hurtful. It's like any level of condescension, and I think this can go a lot of different ways. I think sometimes people condescend to us because we can't drive, and so it's like, wow, I don't know how you do it, like, and you're so active, and wow, I could never do that. It's just like, great. Thanks.
Yeah, people will often say, I could never do that, or how could you do that, or how do you function, or, things like that.
And I feel like there is a fine line between condescension and empathy, because you can be empathetic to the difficulty of not driving. Like, wow, that must be really hard. It is, actually. But like, a lot of times, I don't know, you can tell, and it's usually tone related, and a lot of times it is like more of, I could never do that, and which makes it feel like if I had to live like that, I would have no will to live. Yeah. Which disabled people do hear that a lot. Luckily, I haven't heard that too many times, even if people think it inside their head. They don't often say that to me, but I've heard a lot of disabled people say things like, well, if I had your disability, I would just want to die, or something like that. And that is offensive. That's not even like a microaggression. That's just an aggression. That's that's offensive. Well,
like,
and it's hard because it's like, how do you as a disabled person react to something like that? It's like, well, I mean, I guess I don't, but
I don't know. If someone truly said, I haven't had anyone say that to me, or at least not for a long time. If someone said that to me, I would fight back. I would be like, well, that's rude of you to say. Like, yeah. I would, if someone told me if I were you, I would want to die, I'd be like, I wouldn't know how to even react to that. And I'm sorry to anyone who has heard that said to them.
Yeah, it's just so rude. That is really offensive. But I think it also gets into, we've talked about this before, of like the territory of like people being very put out by you asking for a very simple accommodation. Like, we're not usually trying to ask for a lot, because we don't want to put people out. And so we don't, when we do ask, it's usually because we do really need it. So if we're like, hey, what does that say? And you take just like a passive aggressive minute to reply, like, come on, man.
Yeah. And even kind of going back to the other thing a bit, even though no one has said maybe to our face, I would want to die if I were you, haven't you heard people say to you, which is another funny thing to say to us, people will say, like, my biggest fear is going blind, or my child being blind, they'll say that, and I'm like, and that's like basically the same thing, but you're just not saying it to me, but you are saying it around me and about what I'm going through. And they'll say like, oh, my biggest fear is to be blind. Or, I would
not want to live after that.
Or like, my child being disabled would be like, and of course, like, you want the best for your child, and I'm not saying you should want to go blind or whatever. Right. Like, I'm not saying you have to be happy about that or you should want that, but to say, once again, know your audience.
And I'm not a mom, and I think if you had the news that your child had some kind of a condition or disability, it would require some grieving of the life you thought that they might have. And so, do that. But grieve it and then try to see what their life could be like, because it might not be what you imagined, but it will be different, and it could still be very full in a different way that you just may not have any experience with yet. So, like, open up your mind to the possibilities and listen to podcasts like this.
Right. Yeah. Even if you have a fear of your child being disabled, which I think that's maybe a common fear for people.
I think that's a common fear.
At least just don't say it to us. Don't come up to a disabled person and say, oh my gosh, my biggest fear is for my kid to be you.
God forbid my child come out and they're disabled. Like,
yeah.
I would hate my kid to turn out like you.
Yeah.
Is what we hear.
Yeah. That's what we hear. And kind of like, you're getting into like eugenics territory too.
Yeah.
Kind of. Some people say things like that too, where it's kind of like about, yeah, we don't want any disabled people. It's just like, okay. Like, we need to.
It does make me think of a joke, though. So Casey sent me this, like, reel a while ago on Instagram where it was like...
I'm so scared to know what you're going to say.
I just think it's so funny. It was like a stitched video. So, like, for people that aren't chronically online, is like... It's one half of a video, and then it cuts to, like, whoever is like, posting it. So the video was like, there are, like, 1 million blind people in this world. They were trying to, like, give access to, like, visual, like, tools, like glasses. We want to make that number 0. And this girl, like... stitch the video, and like, she's also legally blind, and so she kind of like looks around suspiciously and then like pans over to her cane on the wall, and she's like, oh, I fear for my life.
Yeah, she was like locking her door. That was hilarious.
It was so good.
That was so funny. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Good. All right. Next on the list is when people just kind of assume you can do something. So an example maybe is you need to pick something up from someone's house, and they're like, oh, just come over in an hour and get it. And we can't drive. Or if people point to something far away, oh, just walk over there. Go, and they don't tell you where it is. They just point. And just people assuming that you can do something without accommodation or without any kind of help. It's just funny. It's not offensive. It's just funny.
And again, this might be another one of those cases where we compensate really well, and so people do forget, because for a minute we can blend into like regular society, and you know, you don't understand the amount of coordination it takes to even schedule rides to go places. And like so like with the ride sharing service that I use, that it's like through the city's paratransit, and it's great. Like it is the best option out there. That doesn't mean it's like perfect by any means, but it is. I have had few issues with it, but like you still have to schedule like at least an hour in advance. Like you can't just pick up and go the way that you would with a car or even with an Uber. You need at least an hour. And people like don't know what that, because I'm not here like whining about it, but
Right.
sometimes this kind of thing like gets me to explain like, actually I can't do a pickup errand. Like that's not something that is like reasonable for me to do. If I'm gonna go somewhere to maybe drop something off, I'm going to stay there to make it worth my while.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna waste my money. Like it costs a lot to do that kind of thing. Besides that, I can't. Like they have restrictions in the way that you schedule rides, so I have to be there at least 30 minutes. Like we don't have the same facilities as sighted people, and a lot of times, especially with transportation, they forget that.
Yep.
And it's like
Yep.
I have no access to that thing.
This might not be even like in the same vein, but a little bit. Have you ever had someone write you a letter in like tiny cursive?
I like the idea of that, and but at the same time, it's like, oh, I can't read.
And then I'm like, oh no, I have to ask someone to read this letter that's to me personally aloud, which is very like you know, a violation of my privacy. Yeah,
and we do our
but it's
best
just
with our
kinda,
tools. Like we'll
we
use a
can try.
magnifier, but like sometimes
try.
it's still hard to read.
Right. Cursive, and I've never gotten along with cursive. I know it. I know the letters, like I learned it, but I just can't read it when it's all together very well. And yeah, it's just so funny. Like
It
I
makes
think
me
that's just
feel
another
illiterate
example.
sometimes.
Yeah,
being
same.
handed a piece of paper. I just
Yep.
I just like I squint at it and I can make out a few letters maybe, and then like my eyes hurt and I just can't.
I mean, it all runs together quite literally. Like it's all connected, and
It is.
It's so much easier with print where it's not.
Even
because
like paper with like very tiny print. Like again, we could use a tool for it. Most of the time. But like, man, sometimes it's just very difficult.
Yep.
And this is like an accessibility thing too. It's like, I think all of these things, just like consider that people might have different lives than you, or maybe than the norm. So it's worth like making the extra effort to be inclusive in whatever way. So if you want to send someone a letter, don't write it in cursive.
That would be smart. That would be a good start. Thank you.
I think it's, when you were talking about gestures, or like when people are like over there, sometimes they'll just kind of do, especially this happened, we talked about this sometimes about how like, especially service workers, they're probably tired of talking to people, or like TSA, and they just kind of like gesture you forward. Gestures, nonverbal communication is so hard.
I think the worst part is when people get offended when you miss their gesture. Like,
And
I
that's
waved
what-
at you the other day. Like,
Yeah, it's
you
like-
ignored me. It's like,
Wow. You
Right.
did? Like,
or like TSA yelling at me when I ignore them, when I literally have my cane.
or like people getting offended when you don't recognize them.
Oh
They're
my
like-
gosh.
They're like, oh, don't tell me you don't remember me. Like, please stop.
I cannot tell you how many times that's happened to me, and it's one of the most humiliating, excruciating moments in the world,
it
because
really
you
is.
feel bad. Not only do you already feel bad, they make you feel worse. Like they
rub it
they
in.
make you feel bad. They rub it in. And I try to explain, like, I can't see, but that's another time that I just don't think they get it, and they think you're rude, and it's so unfortunate. Oh, man, that has happened so many times. I hate it.
Yeah. And you know, this may be the counterpart to an episode we did earlier on of like dear sighted people and ways that sighted people can and have helped us. And so with that in mind, like, obviously, hey, ID yourself unless we're, like, really close friends. You don't have to do that if we're really close friends. But, like,
right.
ID yourself if you don't know us super well, because or if you met us once years ago. Like, come on, man, that's unfair.
Right. Actually, a friend of mine recently was in an airport gate. It was a friend of my mom's. And she yelled my name, and I, didn't know where it was coming from. And when I finally, and then she said my name again, and then she did ID herself, and it's just such a helpful thing. I would have not known who she was, and then I would have been like, who's yelling my name? And then that's kind
of a terrifying experience. Like, I've had that happen before too. Like, I work in a huge building, like, it's the size of an airport, and like a former, like, pretty high level executive that, like, I knew, she's still in the company. Like, she called out my name. And I heard disembodied voice, and I panicked for a minute because I'm like, who's seeing me? Where's it coming from? Should I stand here and wait? Like, I don't know anything, and I feel very lost in that moment. And then she came up and she's like, oh, it's so-and-so. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I was scared.
Yeah, and it's funny because both of our names are not so uncommon and different that they're unrecognizable, but they're not that common where, like, if somebody yells Casey or Cassandra, it's probably us. Like, it's not a super common name that you're gonna, if it was like somebody yelling like Anna Sarah or something, it could be anybody. Yeah. But it's like, if I hear my name, I'm like, it's probably me, and I don't know where you are.
Yeah.
Like, but usually I try to make a face, like this is seriously like my thought process. If someone yells my name, I make a really confused face on purpose so that they remember she's blind.
Yeah.
Because I want to, because even if I can tell that I'm looking in the general direction they are, I want to still look as confused as humanly possible. So that it'll click with them.
Okay, I have, like, multiple things to say that are, like, one is related, one is not. Okay. So I was doing research, like, a few months ago related to work, but we were working with blind and low vision people. And, like, one of the questions was, like, hey, when you go to a place, how do you get help? And I loved how she put it into words. She was an older blind woman, guide dog user, and she was like, honestly, I think a lot of blind people are really used to the looking lost as a tactic.
Yes, I do it. I do
it too, because I need people to know both. I need help if I don't know who to ask for help, because sometimes it's unclear, like, who works at a place or who doesn't.
Yep.
I want people to be like, oh, hey, can I help you? You look lost. And I'm like, I am. Thank you. Or the, like, my friend is exactly that scenario. My friend is calling out to me, and I need them to remember that I can't see well, and I'm very confused right now.
Yes. Yes. I want you to say your second thing, but I'll quickly say I was in New York once. I got off at the wrong train stop, and this was like my first week that I had lived in the city. And I knew, I was like, if I stand here confused for even 1 minute, somebody's going to ask if I need help. And sure enough, I literally stood there at the train station and kind of looked around and looked confused. And some man was like, what do you need? And I said, how can I get back on the downtown train or whatever? But it works. It literally worked within like 5 seconds. It's like, it's incredible.
It's so helpful. It's one of the many tools in our arsenal is looking
It's
confused.
A talent. I don't know. I think within almost 4 years of the pod, we've never talked about that specific thing.
No, I know. It's unreal. I can't believe it. And I think we talked about it
at the
briefly.
very end. Who knows if anyone is still listening.
Right? I don't know. Okay, the other thing was more related to just nonverbal, period, because I have, people communicate that way. Some people communicate nonverbally more than others. And it's just part of their personality, I think, because some people would rather have things left unsaid. And, for the bit of nonverbal that we can pick up, it does kind of feel like a secret communication. I feel like you get a lot out of like a facial expression, and like I have a friend. This was like after church. We were getting lunch after church with like a big group of people, and I have a friend who is especially a nonverbal communicator. And she was sitting next to me, and like her husband was at a table like diagonal from us, and I was gonna look to her to talk to her, but I saw that she was like doing weird things with her face, and I was like, oh, I think she's mouthing. And I was in decent enough lighting. I looked, and I saw movement from the other side, and I kind of started making a joke about it, and I started looking between the two of them like a tennis match. I'm like, oh boy, there's a conversation happening. This is so exciting. I don't know what's being said.
That's too funny though.
And
that's
like
so real.
It became a whole like a funny jokey conversation where like my friend is like, I must be your kryptonite. There's so much that I don't say that I say with actions or with my face.
That's so interesting. Oh my gosh.
So true. It's so true. And I've started pointing stuff out like that. And like, I don't know, maybe people will feel sorry for me when I do. But, you know, when I start pointing out things like that, I think it gives them a little bit more of a glimpse into our lives, that we're not just playing this very elaborate part. Like we genuinely miss out on some stuff, and we want you to know.
Right. And I do think this is kind of a good sister episode to the Dear Sighted People one. I think the Dear Sighted People one, if you haven't heard it, and it was many years ago that we made it, go back and listen. I think that one was almost like positive things you can do for us, and this one was almost things you probably shouldn't do around us. But I think a lot of these things we have touched on some of these things before, but a lot of these things were kind of new that we haven't, and just a different spin on it. And hopefully it wasn't offensive to anyone, or you don't feel more. We hope that nobody sighted listening feels more stressed after this, or that they've done something wrong. If you've ever done any of these things in the past, all you have to do is move on and try not to do it again. But it's fine if you have, obviously.
Yeah. We're constantly learning things as individuals, period. So let this just be one more piece of knowledge you pick up, and think about it from time to time as you hear other people say, wow, I'm so blind.
Yeah, and maybe call them out a bit.
Yeah, that would be the next best step to take.
Right. Yeah, but this was a fun one.
This was fun. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Bye!